Well, hey there, and welcome to the Homer Hangout. It's Friday. Hope you're doing well. I hope your week has been good. We are back this week, and I'm pleased about that. We've done some private streams inside the community, so if you really want to see what's been happening over the last few weeks, been playing some members games in there, giving some live feedback over on the Discord. Link is in the description for you. But we're talking about survival shooters today. So looking forward to diving deeper on that in just a second. Of course, if you want to try out your games with Homer, see your games in the Homer portfolio, why don't you come and test your games with us inside Homer Lab? Use our self-service dashboard, upload your prototypes, a few videos, and we will go ahead and pay to test your games. And depending on the results, you could see your game live in the store in the Homer portfolio. So that's pretty cool indeed. We have a whole machine of people here to make your games the most successful they can be. So we want to see your game. So be sure to come and join us inside Homer Lab, where of course you can get all the Academy content as well. All the presentations that we do here on the live streams on Fridays. You can download the PDFs in there. And yeah, lots of other good stuff as well. Good to see everybody in the chat. What is up, Jilly? What is up, Colette? What is up, Udall? What is up, Resi Motion? What is up, Chris? What is up, everybody? Good to see you here. Looking forward to this one today. Baram Sultan. Hello, hello. Good to see you. So we're going to dive straight in today. Of course, any questions, get them in the chat there. I will do my best to answer them for you. If I miss your questions, which I'm very guilty of doing as the comments stream in, I do miss them. If I haven't answered it, please just type it in again and I will promise I will get to it. And if I can't answer it, another good reason to jump over to the Discord and ask me in there. So let's get going. Salim, good to see you here. Let's jump into things today. And we are talking about survival shooters. And this one, I'm going to start with a genre breakdown. But this one is really, I'm really pumped for this one because it's a game, a genre that I really like. I find it very exciting. It's super next level in terms of the typical hyper casuals that you might be building. A really good insight to what goes into building these games. And of course, if you're not looking to build one of these, there's a ton of valuable information that we're going to talk about today that can get you thinking about aspects and game design that you can put into any type of game that you're building. So super, super excited to get going here. Top Arcade, good to see you. I'm going to try and keep my eye off the chat because it's very distracting. But let's get going today. Let's talk about survival shooters. Michelle, good to see you. Let's go and do some definitions that I like to do. Just so we're all on the same page. I won't read out all the slides. You've got the text there and you can look at them afterwards. But for the most part, they're really based on a merge of roguelikes and roguelites. Now, you'll see a ton of these over on Steam, as well as the App Store, as big and as vast as they can get. Really, really nice to see them on mobile, and they're really great to play. Super hardcore action type games, very arcadey, super juicy, and we'll find out how and what goes into them in just a sec. So based on the 1980s game Rogue, which is a text-based dungeon explorer game, really, really old. I did watch a video on YouTube of the original game, and it's pretty chronic, to be fair. It's very I don't know how to say it politely, but when you look at some of these old games, you can't believe that we were all excited about looking at the quality of these games. But spawning from that was the roguelikes, and essentially they are built around randomly generated levels that you play over and over, and the introduction of permadeath, which is a brutal aspect. However, we'll see in a moment how it is actually so much fun by starting over each time. Now, with a roguelite, now I have to say, the internet cannot agree on definitions here, so don't beat me up in the comments, or if you actually think you have a better sort of explanation than what we have here, please feel free. But we don't want to get into semantics about terms and all of that, but this is the rough idea today. And roguelite spawned with, whilst there's a permadeath and it has a lot of the other features, the most common part is the fact that your character can progress further. So you build your character up and not die completely, shall we say. Now, survival shooters are a great mashup of these two genres. Really introducing a lot more risk and reward in terms of character progression, and a ton of other stuff, really based around the monetization side of things. But there you go. There's the basic definition. I hope you understand where we're coming from now. So it's a mashup of the two, and let's get into it. We got a lot of examples to go through today as well, and a search on the App Store. And I highly recommend you do this after the stream, of course. You'll find hundreds of these games. Some good, some bad. But let's go through some of the better ones today. And let's start with really what is the backbone. So as I mentioned, we've got the permadeath in the middle there. But let's start off with character progression, because this is pivotal to the genre. It's the backbone of the game design. Leveling up and character progression is key. And what's great for the monetization is there are so many game loops that we can explore here, in terms of monetization loops, I should say. It is almost infinitum the way we can monetize these games, which is why it's so great for retention and lifetime value of the games when we're looking at the character progression. Permadeath, just in case we are not clear, it means that every time you start your round or stage or area, you begin as a base level character, and each time throughout the level you will build up and collect new items and weapons. But if you die, you start again with that basic level. Now the difference is with the roguelites is that we can upgrade that base level, whereas on the rogue game itself was very much you literally started afresh every time, which is chronic. And the procedurally generated content or random content is super great for game developers, because it takes a lot of the work off you after the systems are built, because the random nature of the game allows you to expand your content more and not basically hard code every single level or hand build a load of unique stuff each time. Okay, I am gonna try and get to the chat. We will break halfway through. Rogue and then 96 Diablo. Fabian, good to see you here. Yes, exactly. Diablo is a great example. Now, I will kill that fly real quick, but we'll get to this in a minute. Now, what we're going to do, and I want to be clear that this is today focusing on top-down survival shooters. There are many different versions here. You can have platformers. You can the list is really endless of what you can apply the fundamentals of the survival shooters to so many different games. And in fact, I'm going to talk a little bit next week about Arch Hero and that type of action shooter, which is takes a lot of the lead from this, and it will become more clear as we go through this today. So, for the benefit of today, we're talking about the top-down shooters, and you see a bunch of the ones I've put on the screen here for you. I've chosen 5 core examples that we use throughout today. As I mentioned earlier, there is a ton of these, so it was just purely a widespread of sort of graphics and different setups that we're going to explore today. We've got the OG there really of Survivor.io that really catapulted this genre with huge effect onto the App Store nearly 3 years ago now. Some more recent ones here of Survive Squad from AI Games FZ, which kind of has hyper casualized it up a little bit. A more real looking one, which is really beautiful game in Zombie Waves, which is more of a 3D version. As are the other ones where Survivor.io is very much a 2D game. And I think if there's ever a genre that you can get away with 2D, certainly in 23/early 24, this has got to be a good candidate. But we will always be looking for innovation. But these are the examples we're going to go through today. Some great games all in their own right. But as I mentioned, Survivor.io, kind of the big gun here. And I just thought I'd put this on here to give us a little bit of context of what we're looking at in terms of popularity. Now, it has to be said, Survivor.io did a masterclass of UA on this game to launch it, mostly via TikTok. They got a load of mini influencers and did a ton of fantastic viral videos on TikTok. And as you can see from the little GIF here, how crazy and juicy these games are, it would work well for that audience. They're super engaging. They get incredibly crazy. So they did really well. But yeah, over 300 million downloads. These are estimated numbers in case they're bigger or smaller whenever you're reading this or watching this, I should say. 80 million downloads with 300 million revenue estimated. That's unified across the stores. But even today, 3 years later, this last month, 1.5 million monthly active users, which is pretty astonishing. And again, these are guesstimates. The data is pulled from both App Annie and Sensor Tower. I should mention, so publicly available data. But yeah, so there we go. This is what we're talking about. So let's get into what goes into building these games. Just going to keep my eye on this chat. Roman, good to see you. Happy Friday indeed. So, compulsion loops. We talk a lot about core loops in games, but the compulsion loop has never been more relevant when we're looking at survival shooters. They essentially... Joseph Kim from Gama Sutra was the best quote and the best explanation of this, and I literally stole it from Joseph Kim. So I really appreciate that, but I'm just going to read it out because it really does a better job than I ever could. So a habitual design chain of activities that will be repeated to gain a neurochemical reward, a feeling of pleasure and or relief from pain. So essentially, in a nutshell, it really triggers the one more go. The pleasure in this loop is so pure, it works so good. So essentially, we kill the enemies, which will be our action. We win gold or something, whatever the currency is in the game, as the reward. And as we die or finish that level, we will then purchase to upgrade our character, and so the loop continues. Let's dive a little bit deeper into this loop because I think it makes a little bit more sense in terms of the actual practical application of this. And I've taken typical gameplays here from a lot of the main games, a lot from Survivor.io, just so it is rooted in some example that you can go ahead and play for one, but they all will have variations on this. But for the sake of today and for our example, we're going to use this one here. So for the game, it is you're tasked for each round, I should say, lasts probably around 15 minutes, and through that you have to basically kill everything that is coming at you. Some games, as I mentioned here, you do have say you have to kill 100 enemies before the level is over, or the chapter, or whatever. So there's two variants of that, but you will always be rewarded with some soft currency, some gold, and potential blueprints for upgrading your weapons. And then you go to the next area, or it unlocks the next part, or whatever happens in the game. But that's the basic gist. So we, as the player, will start off with the simple weapon. We kill the baddies. Those baddies will then drop diamonds or gems, which we then collect. Typically, there is a meter that is displayed on the GUI that will fill up, like so, as you collect all these diamonds. And once that level gets to the end, you then get an option to upgrade your weapons, or choose new weapons to equip. Now, we've seen these a lot, and you'll see them as we move on today. You get a choice of 3, typically, which is another random section of the game. But then you have to survive as long as you can with your newly upgraded weapon to kill more baddies and keep that loop going. We upgrade the character, and then it all starts again. So, hope this is making sense so far. Once you see some of the examples, it should become absolutely crystal clear. I'm sure many of you have played these games. But it's always good to break this stuff down to really look at how and what we're doing, and how potentially you could place this sort of upgrade system into another game or another genre, because it's a really powerful system. And I like to break it down like that to ensure step by step this is what's happening, and can we employ this sort of system onto other things, even if we're not doing a shooter game. All right, so let's go into first time user experience and onboarding. And if you haven't, go and check out the full video we did on the masterclass of first time user experience over on the channel. You can just click on the live tab on YouTube. And by the way, while you're there, you might as well subscribe, and you can like the video while we're going, because you might as well. But get the full masterclass there. But it's really it's never been more as important, I feel, as in this type of game, because it really sits the player. Let me rephrase that. I want to rephrase that to impress on you the importance here, because these games are way more complicated than your typical hyper casual. There's a lot more going on. We really need to walk the player through all the systems that we're going to be introducing. There's a lot of UI screens, there's loads of upgrades, and the player needs to learn how this all works, especially if they're new to the format. As ever, as we discussed on the other video, we really want to ensure that we're not bombarding them with tons of arrows everywhere, chasing that yellow little pointer thing. Do this, do this, do that, do this. It drives players wild, and they will just bounce if there's too much of that going on. So we want to employ the best practices here for our user onboarding, especially in games as the level of complexity rises, and it can't be ignored, this one. The other part of the first time user experience is that we can introduce a story element, which I feel is lacking in a lot of these games. The example here is from Mini Hero Survivor. This game is essentially a clone of Survivor.io, but it does demonstrate a really nice sort of storyboarding aspect to the game, where you kind of get a feeling of what's happening and what to expect. And as we go on and this video plays through a little bit, they've done a really nice job of putting the pop-ups as we start playing the game. I really like this card section here. I think it's really nice, really nicely built. Lets us know that we've got 7 characters that are coming, and drops us straight into the level there, and I think that's really nice. A little bit of a pop-up here, but the language is really friendly. And as we go around here, it just focuses in on the gems that we pick up, that we just discussed, and lets us know exactly what to expect. The first upgrade comes in and another bit of onboarding there, and then we get to choose and use it. So I think it does a really good job of this. Like I said, it's a little too close to Survivor.io as a clone. A different theme, but very, very close on all the buttons and everything. But for the purposes of this example, I think it does a really good job. So you really got to be on top of your game here. Don't ignore this part, which is often ignored. I really want you to make sure you don't ignore this bit. All right. So let's talk about the in-game levels. What is up, Addy? Good to see you here. Typically on the first level of these games, you'll get an open world or total infinite map level, which is really smart for a number of reasons. One, it's completely fun, and you're just not prohibited in any way whatsoever of what you can do. You can literally run forever if you so wish to do so. Not just on the first level, of course. There are other levels and other throughout the game you can have these open maps, but for the first level it really just bind into the onboarding a little bit to make it a little easier for the player, and it's really good fun just running around with no boundaries at all. It makes for a really fun first time sort of playing through the game, where you can essentially run away if you need to. If you like, if there's too many baddies coming at you, you can often you can just run away as fast as you can. Yeah. Sorry, I totally lost my train of thought there. Yeah, so essentially you can just run around as much as you like, and it's really nice for this first level especially. There's also arena-based levels where they're walled in, and you can see here we've used Space Survivor. Again, another pretty close clone to Survivor.io, but nonetheless a different vibe about it. And you can see here literally the boundaries of the arena that we're in now. And what this does, it really changes the dynamic of the way the player plays the game, and also the weapons, and also the potential consequences of choosing different weapons when you're in a different arena. So for this one, you can't see it so well, but the example I've put here is in Survivor.io, you can select a football that basically bounces off enemies. Now, in an arena like this can bounce off the walls. So once you get to choose some weapons that we'll get to in just a sec, you'll see that it really does influence the choices of the game and the way you play it. So when I play this, and I play way too much Survivor.io this week, you tend to run around the edges a lot. and shoot inwards, whereas the open world you can run in any direction you want, and essentially it has a very different feeling just by having some constraints on the level design itself. I will answer the questions at the end, Razzie. Can you just remind me towards the end, or I might break in the middle to get the questions in, because I just lose track so badly when I do this. All right, so that's open world and your level. You basically your level scenarios where you have open world is very common, where you can run around, do whatever you want, and closed arenas. I think this is where one of the areas that we can innovate on, but we'll come to that right at the end as we talk about today's presentation. All right, so what is in these levels? We have chests, or boxes, or crates, or whatever your game theme is really appropriate to have the assets showing. These typically regenerate, and inside these chests you will find special items or coins. So the special items, again, will depend on what you have in your game, in the theme of your game, but they're really nice little areas of the map to run around and blast open, and can be really helpful, especially if you're getting a bit beaten up and you can run for a chest and now you're praying that there's a heart in there where you can get some health. So it's a really great way to add some tension into the game, and some surprise. You know, like I said, if you're the health one's probably the best example there. So if you're gonna die, you can just run around and try and get to the chest before the baddies come and get you. Really nice. These regenerate, so very generous in their nature, which I love in games. I'm a huge fan of being super generous. I think it's really important and adds so much to the experience. And these chests do this really well. You can see there, we're looking at Wizard Hero, and I'm just running up the screen here. This is an open world level, and I'm just getting the chests all the way up. And you can see on the left and the right, picking up mostly coins here by the looks of things. But yeah, really nice. The good thing is that if you have chests, and this goes for any game, if you've got chests or pickups or crates or something, do make sure that they're meaningful. Make sure that it's worth going for them. Your players should be excited to find out what's inside and be delighted once they open it. It's a really, really important thing that is really often overlooked. So you don't want to be running for a chest and you get one coin and you're just like, oh my goodness. Another way to randomize part of the game, of course. So potentially you could have a lower value thing that is on a low percentage, but yeah, be generous with these. It makes for so much more fun. Inside the levels, we have baddies, of course. And this is where the games really come into their own. The enemies will respawn and respawn and respawn. Yeah, it is a little bit, isn't it? Coming in waves after you've defeated various percentage, however you set it up. X amount of baddies will come in and new ones will spawn in, obviously to keep it action-packed as possible. Typically there will be a warning to inform you that a new wave is coming in, so you can prepare to get frightened or whatever. But normally they get bigger, and you increase different types of baddies with harder to kill health attributes, and thus the whole balancing here is super critical. So there is really no better example that I can think of off the top of my head for in-game balancing than these types of games, because you have to figure out how many enemies do I have to kill before I can upgrade my weapons, to allow me to be powerful enough to be able to handle the next wave come in, and that over and over and over and over and over. And these games get super crazy. So the balance in here is super critical. But yeah, they're a ton of fun, especially as your weapons start being properly upgraded. And you really get to. I was getting super excited. It's the first time in a long time that I've been really sort of engrossed in a game such as I played a lot of Survivor.io. If I'm honest, it really is quite good. But you can see here with the weapons popped up there, and we can upgrade. But let's go more into that in a minute. So inside your levels, it's basically chests, and of course the baddies that you're going to be sending the player's way. Now, once you kill the baddies, this is where they drop the diamonds or the crystals or the tokens. And a lot of the time at the top, and you can see here on Lonely Survivor, if you look at the yellow bar at the top, number 2 bar, you can see that filling up as I'm collecting the green crystals that are dropped by defeating the enemies. This is quite important. I played a couple of these games and they didn't have this bar, and I actually found that quite annoying because I never quite knew when I was going to get an upgrade. And I think for this one it's quite imperative that there's some sort of indicator of the amount of crystals you've collected and when to expect the next weapon upgrade. It can change the style of play, I found, especially if there's a chance of getting some health type pickup, which a lot of them do have, where you can systematically over time restore your health. If I'm really running low and I know I'm close to picking up the gems, I'm then praying mentally that I get a health one, right? You will see here, and why I say it's a familiar screen, because we see this a lot of the time in plenty of games, and it was introduced into a lot of hyper casual games of adding meta in of probably last 18 months, probably maybe longer now. It's hard to keep track of time, really. But you'll know these screens, and this is where we can then start choosing our weapon upgrades. For the most part, all of these have multiple levels of upgrades. You can see here it's a 5-star system on Lonely Survivor. It's very, very common there. And actually, you can go beyond the 5-star as well, which I find is really nice. So you get like super duper ones after you 5-star them out. But this gives a strategy to the play for the player. You can choose, for instance, there are, what have we got on here? See, so I chose, I can't see what it's called from the view I'm looking at, but I chose the orange circle, which gave me a force field around my character. And you can see I can just plow through the enemies there, which is a really nice weapon upgrade, right? But if I've got a boss coming soon in the game, I would probably want to choose some more of a projectile shooting long range weapon, because I don't want to get too close to the boss because he hits really hard. So you can see how the strategy comes into place with this. And the most important thing when we're looking at this, and again, I won't name names, but I did play some games where I chose some upgrades to the weapons and I really couldn't see what they were doing, and it was very disappointing. So you can see, I'm just going to wait for this there. So there is the orange glow that comes around. When I choose it again, next one, do I? You can see that orange glow really change visually from like a one circle to a really much fatter circle. So the visual impact of the upgrades should really, really be front and center here. These are highly visual games, and you really need to ensure that once the upgrades are chosen, that you visually represent that correctly and appropriately. It needs to be a little bit mental, if I'm honest. The bigger you get up, so each weapon here, you're going to need like 5+ versions of it in your game to have the basic one right through to like the legendary one. So it makes your player feel super powerful and like they've made the right decision to choose it. Actually, it's a good example with the orange here. I knew that. That's why I did it. All right. So let's go next. Randomised bonuses. Another really big aspect to this game. Survivor.io, and I know I'm trying to not fanboy over it too much, but it really is a masterclass of this that I've seen of all the ones, of the spinning wheels and fruit machines and different variations of this, but their lucky train is really quite smart. So this is rather than the 3 upgrades that we saw on the screen there that you choose, these are activated when you kill a mini boss or a boss. You get like a special chest. It fires a rainbow out of it. And you get what they're calling the lucky train here, which is essentially a potluck roulette wheel of enabling you to level up a skill of the magnitude of, I think it's 5 in Survivor.io. So this is I recorded 5. So I recorded the best version of this, but often you'll just get 1 upgrade or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. But I got the top one here, the example we're looking at, and we have we're only allowed on this version of it to upgrade items that we already own or have already collected. So you don't get any new ones, and I think there's potentially room for one little new one in here as well. Again, this might be an area of some innovation. But a really nice break in play when we pick up, and it adds that source of luck. And again, it's that anticipation that this brings, and you go, oh, please give me that, please give me that. And I think on that one you might even see doubled up icons where I haven't. So the fire bombs here and the circle things and the magnets are doubled or tripled up, because it's filling the screen here to the amount I have. So you could potentially get a triple upgrade on one of your items here. Really cool indeed. This is something you can definitely carry on to another genre for sure. I'd like to see this way more. I think it's super fun. It really gamifies. It's a really gamey thing, for want of a terrible expression there, but I think it's really smart, and I think you can introduce this into many different games quite happily, and it could be really fun. Alrighty, mini bosses. So apart from the normal baddies that we get, you'll often see mini bosses come in. Now, we speak a lot on the channel inside the academy about bonus levels and stuff like that, of a really nice way of breaking up the monotonous gameplay, and this is a really nice way that these games do it. They bring this in as a change of pace, so you've got another bigger guy to go for, as well as all the other enemies, and they reward you handsomely. You get one of those, for instance, a lucky train after you defeated it, so it's well worth going for them. And visually, certainly in Zombie Waves, which is our 3D version here, a really great game, by the way. Currently got about, I think it's got about 300 monthly active users on it, doing pretty well for them, but really smart. Oh, so it gives us a super upgrade on that one. I couldn't quite remember. They all do it slightly different. But yeah, so really nice mini bosses, breaks up the swarms of all the time. And of course, throughout the game, we'll get the main bosses as well. So on a time limit game, these will normally come in like every 5 minutes. You last 5 minutes and you'll get a boss come in. Now, for most of them, they will put an enclosure around the boss, so you can't just like run away. So you are enclosed in that, and I think it's a really smart way of making an event out of the boss level. It really does break up the gameplay a lot, because if you had to survive 15 minutes of just pure swarms, it would get very, very boring, especially towards the end of the 15 minutes. As you play through these games, you'll find that your upgrades are more powerful, more OP, and you can handle it better. And a lot of the time you're just kind of just circling around because you can deal with everything because you've upgraded so much. So these bosses put a really welcome change into the gameplay. Super fun to develop and build these kind of things because you can have all sorts of different mechanics and systems built into your levels. There is a wealth of examples out there. I mean, just look at like Nintendo bosses or even like Legends of Zelda bosses, for the mechanics you could be inspired by. So you can have a lot of fun with these bosses. And especially with the theme, we've got the American footballer dude here as a zombie. But you could basically go wild on these bosses, and they're really fun. And again, rewarded generously for beating those things. Right, let's talk about music and effects. Neglected by many hyper-casual games for far too long, in my opinion. But luckily now, as we move into 2024 and beyond, sound and visual effects is going to become way more important. You have to now put sound in your game. Plenty of free sound libraries out there. We got some links inside the Academy, so it shouldn't be an issue, but you need to be thinking about sound now. Gone are the days without sound, and especially in these games, really important that when you pick up stuff, you start to remember the sound of what it's like to pick up a magnet, or you pick up a big coin, or you open a special chest. You need to start associating those sounds with the game. And because there's so much going on, you really need to have different sounds for different enemies, different alerts, all of that stuff. It really adds to the immersion on these types of games, especially. And I've just put like a little tip there. It's like, because there's so much going on in these games, imagine if every single one of these enemies that we're shooting has its own death sound. I mean, that would just blow your ears off. So be smart about your audio engine. There's plenty of on the asset store that you can plug in that will do a fine job for you. If you don't have one, now is the time to go and get yourself one and start building this by default into your games, to make sure it's properly managed and you can really control it well. Using a radius for your sound, turn off. So a lot of these bullets you can see here on Lonely Survivor again here. I've got that ricochet bullet, which is much like the football we talked about earlier, bouncing around. That actually goes through enemies. So enemies in the distance, almost off screen, will be being killed at this point. So you need to make sure that they're turned off on the volume. Otherwise, it's just going to be hideous completely. All right. Wow. Character progression. Oh my goodness, this is way too big for today's stream and out of scope. But we're going to touch more on this next week when we talk about Arch Hero, because they're a staple and really are fundamental here, of these types of games and many other hybrid casual games. The monetization loops here are absolutely bonkers, and this is why these can be such profitable games, because the upgrades and the customization and the opportunities to boost and all sorts of things are wildly massive. So one thing I want to concentrate most on here, and I'm going to read the slide a little bit, it's the replayability of your games, and that's a really big part of the survival shooter genre, but for your players. And we can see if this loops round again from Heroes versus Hordes here, you can see the card screen with how many characters there is here. So I don't know, so I'm going to make it up. There's 15 characters that they've built so far here. Each one has a ton of unique attributes and weapons and skills, which each part can be upgraded. So you can literally upgrade each individual part of each individual character to then go and replay the game via those characters. They also unlocks more new monetization loops, and I'll put just a few examples here just for funsies, but you could have special areas of the map that could only be played by, I can't see the names, only be played by night. So potentially you could fork a storyline off to the knight, and he is the only one that can enter those dungeons or whatever. Or the fire wizard has to go to the Iceland to play his own storyline with killing ice monsters with the fire guy. So there's all of that area into it. You can pay to win, because these are single player games. Pay to win is okay. Remember, it's never okay to use pay to win when you're playing multiplayer games. That's when it blows up the internet. But imagine here for Crazy Tinkerer, we could have a rewarded video to give him a 20-minute times 10 buff on experience for a rewarded video, and you want to build him up. So you think, sure, if I'm going to play him for a little while, let's build watch a video, great exchange of value, and this session I'm going to do one round, say 15 minutes, I'm going to get 10x experience. Great. So that's a really sort of interesting way of monetization. And buffs for the items, again, maybe ×2 power. Maybe you have a in-app purchase here for, say, a god or an S level. So I max out the entire knight character, and then I get the option to have the gold version of legendary status with a special sword only by the upgrade and a permanent 5% boost. I just made that up. I plucked those numbers out of the air. Of course, it would need to be balanced and all the rest of it. But you get my point. Because these games are based on the characters and it's so rich in the essence of the games, they have so many options for loops of monetization. It's crazy, especially if you can get your players hooked on the game. We will cover this a lot more, but it's just too vast and too technical for today's stream. All right, skill trees. This is where the upgrades happen. Much like the character progression, the real heartbeat of the monetization can come in here. So before we end off today, I want to leave it on this screen as you can go through. It's kind of the onboarding of the skill tree from Lonely Survivor here. Beautiful game. However complex or deep you want to go on these skill trees, these are big games we're looking at here, so they are vast. And I'm sure if we could scroll up, it will go up to I don't know how it will go up, but you get my point. You can see how these skill trees are working. Really nicely laid out one here, but very understandable still. Doesn't matter how deep you go on these things, you really need to take a beat and start. I would get a piece of pen and paper and start planning this stuff out and thinking about how does your game, what's the theme of your game, and what are the mechanics and the goals that you're going to set out for the game, and how will this influence how you can level up? So if I've got a night game, a medieval game, I might start off with bow and arrows or swords. Oh no, I don't know any of their names. The things with the chains with the spikes on, the old medieval weapons. If that's your theme, terrible example because I don't know any of the names. Maybe even shields or stuff like that. How far is that going to go? And what's coming next? And are you going to have magic in it? I've written it on. I should have just read the slide out. I'm an idiot. So before diving into creating your skill tree, consider your theme, mechanics, and the goals. Do you have guns, magic, crazy left field stuff like banana bombs and roaming sheep, things like that, which I think could be super fun? Do you have all of them? You need to really plan out on where it is going for your game. So determine the abilities and the upgrades your player can do with all of this stuff, and how is it going to affect the gameplay, and what sort of in-game currencies are they going to need to upgrade them? Do they upgrade them inside the game with one currency, which is normal, and then outside another soft currency or secondary or a tertiary currency? All of this stuff is going to be really neat to plan out. This is not a one level runner that you can just loop around. You really need to plan this stuff out. And most importantly, you need to future-proof your systems that you're going to build here, because you won't be able to build all the content you want initially. It will be a process here. So try and make your architecture as modular as possible to say, right, of course, I can easily add another weapon if I need to, and it can integrate with what we already have. It's just more stuff. So that's really important for you to, from a technical side of things, really plan this stuff out and make sure you have a robust architecture here, to make sure that when you want to grow it, when your game crushes it, that you haven't come to a load of spaghetti code and you got no way and you have to rewrite the entire systems. All right. Oh my goodness. 54 minutes. I've got a feeling that was my last slide. I'm going to press the button. I don't honestly know if it is or not. I think that was my last slide today. It was. Wow. There we go. All right. I didn't stop. I'm glad I didn't stop for questions in the middle, because I didn't really have time. So there we go. I hope that was helpful. Give me a like if you want to see some more of this stuff. Give me a like as well if you want to see Arch Hero type games next week. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into the upgrades of that. Any questions? Now is your time. I did see a mace. That is it. Thanks, Chris. Where was that question that came in? So yeah. That the top-down shooter is just one aspect of this. You've got stuff like Dead Cells, which is more like a platformer. There's all sorts of different versions of this game, and one I think's really it's got all the systems in these games that could be transferred to other genres, which I really like. So this one here from Rizzy Motion, can putting the player through a learning curve increase lifetime value? That is a great question, and the short answer is absolutely. Almost certainly. If you can put your player, please go and check out the first time user experience video on the channel, and you'll learn all about the benefits of doing just this. How important it is to keep your players in early on, how to guide them through without really over holding their hand, and how the impact on LTV could be. If, for instance, you lose 75% of your players at the start on day one, how do you think that will impact lifetime value? Or what would happen if you kept 75%? I think it speaks for itself. So yes, Razzie Motion. Don't ignore your first time user experience. It's so important. We did a whole video on it because it's something that we didn't see from Hypercasual. It's just like, dosh, there we go. Simple controls. Didn't really need to worry too much about explaining anything. As we get into these bigger type games, we definitely need to treat our players with a little bit more love. And of course, it goes without saying that up the quality of the games that we're producing, full stop. All right. Let's have a look. I'm just going to click on these. Let's have a look. Addy says, how can you even compete building up all these features while not fumbling the balance of features? I don't believe for 1 second I said this was easy. Honestly, I would think that I would go and download some of the games, and I think this is where playing through and using your experience and your skills as a game designer will come in pretty solid indeed. I have got to have a drink, 1 sec. And of course, you can use your data to ensure that you're not missing anything fundamental here. It's not an easy process at all. You're going to need some spreadsheets here, I would say, to record your values and really figure it out how it should work on paper. Yeah, it's difficult. It's a great question. This is why a lot of these games go in soft launch for a long, long time. Sometimes if you get something a little bit OP, it can whack the balance out. But I wouldn't be frightened about it. Honestly, I'd love to build one of these games. I think they're great. All right, Paris, good to see you here. I wonder why so many of these games are so similar to their competitors. How about adding physics, Bomberman-like, total voice crack then. You didn't hear that, right? Give me a like if you didn't hear that. I reckon you should. What about adding bomber-like mechanics, melee combat, or something? Well, exactly. I think here is rife for innovation. You get a lot of the clones because it's lazy and they see a big game doing super well and they think, I can do that, I'm just going to clone it. And they forget all the things that went into making that game great. I would love now to talk about some innovation here because I think it's rife for innovation, especially within the level design. I think you can have some really interesting level layouts here. We saw on, I forget the name. Let me just pull this back up for my own benefit here. The 3D version. I don't know what it is. Where is it? Come here. Zombie Waves by Fun Formula PTE. I'll just flick back to this screen here real quick. And I'll just take you off there, Paris, for a second. Ooh, that was weird. So we can see here in Zombie Waves, what's really smart here is that they got this fence in that level. It's really nice. We got a bigger version of it somewhere, haven't we? Let's get the bigger version on that boss, on the boss section. Let's just flick to that real quick. Don't forget that all these slides will be available inside the Academy on Monday. You can download. Let's get to the bosses here real quick. Here we go. Can we see the fence there? Let's go to this one maybe. So I think the level design here is great for innovation. I think they've done a really nice job, obviously taking it 2D, but you can see here you can shoot through the fence. I don't know if I go anywhere near the fence on that one. I definitely did on this one, which I think is a really neat idea. so you can shoot through the fence and stuff like that. I think the level design on a lot of these games, while it's really important to make sure you don't overcrowd this, so you know what's going on, I think there's a lot of innovation to be had with the level design itself to make it less repetitive all the time. And I think the key here is we know the genre does really well. It's super fun to play. They're really juicy, great marketability on these games, especially on TikTok. A great platform for the marketability for these types of games because they're so juicy. Streamers will want to play them because every game is randomized, so it's different. Permadeath is real, so the risk reward is great because if you die, you're starting over. So there's so much going for these. I think you need the innovation. Where's Paris's question again? Statement. How about adding physics, Bomberman-like mechanics, melee combat or something? Now, many of them do melee combat. But as for Bomberman-like mechanics, sure. This is where I think you can mix and merge and create something kind of innovative here. And I can't think of another genre that I would like to try first. The other thing as well, if you build all these, like the skill tree system and stuff like that, I mean, I say it sounds like dead easy, but if you get those systems in place, if you build them enough so you can reuse them, reuse a lot of the code, you can then put them in to your games anyway. So I really don't think it's a terrible idea to create yourself a sort of template here that you can reuse for other games as well. All right, let's have a look at Top Arcade. What do you think about rhythm-based games like Crypt of the Necrodancer? Well, of course. I mean, Crypt of the Necrodancer is a roguelite. In essence, that's exactly what it is. It's a dungeon crawler, but rhythm-based, and that was the innovation they brought to it. That's a great example because that's exactly what it's a roguelike game. I think if you went on Steam, you'll see Into the Gungeon. You'll see especially where Survivor.io was inspired from Vampire Survivors, right? Which I think Vampire Survivors is now on mobile, and I think I might be right in saying that's been nominated for Game of the Year on the Apple Awards. So, you know, this is not like a little thing. English is hard. Thanks, Udall. I appreciate you. So, yeah, I'm not a big fan on the rhythm-based games purely because you have to have volume on them. And I think you narrow down the audience a bit there. And it's just not a personal love of mine, but you just got to look at piano tiles and stuff like that. Do exceptionally well. So if that's your jam, I always think you should lean into the skills you're best at and do the things you love, because your products will be ultimately the best they will be if you love what you're building. Alrighty, I've gone over. Let's have this here. Steam is also a great place to get inspiration for mechanics. I think there was a mining one that combines horde with terrain manipulation that affects enemy pathfinding. There you go. Inside the Academy, I'll do a whole stream on looking through Steam, so don't forget to go and check that out. Yeah, it's free to join. You just sign up through Homer Labs, and then you can test your games with us as well. So that's a cool thing. But yeah, all inside the Academy. I've already done streams on that, so go and join us over there inside Homer Lab. Like I said, you can get the presentation for this and all the other streams and all the rest of it. And if there's nothing else to answer today, I will then go and say ta-da for today. So I hope you found that useful. Do give me a like on the way out, guys. Helps a ton. If you're on the replay and you made it this far, you are amazing. And leave me a comment under the video. I love reading the comments after. Often I miss some of the stuff that you say in the chat. And it's not because I'm mean or anything. Ian Key, wow, what is up? Hope you're doing well. Nicholas, I appreciate that. Great work. Well, thank you. I am here to serve. Ian, that is amazing. Good to see your face there. Hope you're doing well. Turbo Gaming. What is the ideal length for a level in a hybrid casual game? What type of hybrid casual game are you building? That's like a real open-ended question there. It's impossible to answer. If you want to go for an epic prototype for a hybrid casual, I would say you need at least 40 minutes gameplay. If that answers your question, then I hope so. But it really depends. 15 minutes is the session length for the survival shooters. That's typically what a lot of them do. A lot of the ones on the very first slide I shared today is a level-based game where it runs down on the amount of enemies and not on a timer. And the chests that come in on that game fall from parachutes. So there's innovation to be had. Great, Ian. Good to... amazing to see you. Super pleased about that. Great. Jilly's here as well. Old school. There we go. All right, Chris, thanks you. I appreciate that. Oh, there's a good one. Is there an Happy Friday, everybody. Yes, there is. We are back on the normal schedule. I was, a short break for you guys on the YouTube channel, but I've still been here doing all the stuffs. But yeah, so back next week. I'm going to go through stuff like Arch Hero, stuff like Tomb Raider Go. I really can't remember the name of that game. I have it here somewhere or something. Tomb Raider Reloaded. Yeah, there's a few of those. I think we should dive into those. They still fall pretty much within this area. Slightly different, but more about shooting stuff this next few weeks as we run up to Christmas. I really want to see some of these prototypes in the academy. Show me what you've got when it comes to these types of games. We want to see your games. We want to publish these games for you. These sort of games are doable, especially a 2D version. Infinitely easier to build, whichever way you look at it. Let's see your games. Did anyone join the voodoo competition? Well, I didn't, but if you did, good luck. If you got a puzzle, you can test it with us as well. Dual skills. There we go. Especially for you, Colette. I appreciate you all. Have a good weekend, everybody. Give me a like on the way out. Leave me a comment underneath the video. That helps me out a ton as well. Just let me know that you're enjoying these streams. And yeah, with all that said and done, that's going to go and wrap it up for me for now. Dual skills and all of that. I will see you next week. Come and join me in the Discord. See you later, guys. Take it easy. Bye-bye.